Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are taking a look at Lair of Darkness and specifically how to use Ties of the Brethren in Lair of Darkness. Now, Lair is one of my favorite decks of all time, if not my favorite deck of all time. And one of my concurrent favorite types of builds for the deck is Ties of the Brethren. Playing this card because the value of this card is just so insane. If you don't know what this card does, it targets a level 4 or lower monster on your field. It summons 2 more monsters from the deck with the same type, level, and attribute as that monster. Doesn't negate their effects or anything. It does have its drawbacks. You pay 2,000. You can't use your battle phase that turn, and you can't special summon for the rest of the turn after you resolve this card. So it only works in very particular decks, but reading this card, you're like, this is going to be great in some decks. Not a lot of decks, though. And this is one of those decks. So, yeah. Today we're going to be looking at the main plays and the main targets you should be considering when you're looking at a Ties of the Brethren build of Lair, and also like what your goal should be with ties and what you should be going for, and also be looking at level 4s, and also even potentially talking about future support and what would really help this version and how this card acts in the deck, because it's really good, but it's not perfect. It can be a little bit clunky at times. You don't really want to play 10 plus normal summons in your deck, because obviously that'll be super clunky. And maybe that could change down the line, but we'll see. So obviously, starting off with the level 3 cards that you need to be considering, this is the main level of monster, level 3 Dark Fiends. Obviously, you have Lilith, best Lady of Lament. Alice, second best Lady of Lament. Malice, fourth best Lady of Lament. The third best one hasn't even been revealed yet. We have a name, but we don't even have effects, and I guarantee you it's better than Malice, because this card stinks. Actually, you know what? Get out of my video. I don't even want to look at it anymore. Tour Guide, obviously a good card, and Sangan and Skarm, these are your value cards. These are your best tribute targets, as well as Alice. Like, Alice is also a good tribute target, because really what it comes down to is you need to be tributing like your proactive resource, like getting cards, like Lilith, and I guess technically you count Skarm that way, and also your like reactive cards. When they get tributed, when they're sent to grave, then they get you a resource. There's another card also, Doomdog Octhros. I feel like I wanted to mention him here. He is the one card as far as level 3 Dark Fiends that I look at in the entire pool of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm like, this card could be insane one day. Grinder Golem was illegal when Lair first came out, so this card could actually just search Grinder Golem, and if you don't remember, Grinder Golem's like insane. So you would just hold him for a turn, and then on the next turn you just had a 1-card Link 4 that could get you like 2 pops or 2 bounces or whatever on the way up to like a Link 4, and it was just like so insane. But yeah, Octhros is really cool. If he pretty much, when he's sent from field to grave, he searches a level 8 Fiend. Exactly. Level 8's a pretty common type. Fiend's a pretty common type. Sorry, Fiend's a common type. Level 8's a pretty common level. If Konami ever comes out with like a really good generic level 8 Fiend, like this card becomes like really considerable in the deck. And also it's an Almirage linkable mon, so you could even go normal summon, link it for Almirage, search a Fiend. Depending on what the Fiend does, that could actually make this card a 3 of in the deck. We'll see. But we'll put him off to the side for now, and we'll just remember him for as far as the future support stuff goes. But here we go. So getting into these targets, like I said, Lilith is our best, active like resource grabber, as well, and these are our reactive cards, or our like what's the word I'm looking for, passive resource getting cards. And then we have Tour Guide. So Tour Guide specific synergy with Ties of the Brethren is in this specific scenario. That's like kind of cool. If you go normal Tour Guide, a lot of people are going to feel threatened by this. They are going to use Imperm, Veiler, Ash, whatever. They know that this card represents a ton of value a lot of the time in Lair of Darkness builds and Phantom Knight builds. So they will Ash this immediately. And so if they Ash you, it means Ties of the Brethren is guaranteed to resolve. So you activate Ties and then you summon. You don't get the full value out of it because you're summoning Tour Guide instead of one of the other monsters that you would have been summoning otherwise, but you bait out a hand trap, so you can't be mad about it. Other than that, you're never summoning this unless you absolutely have to off of Ties, so we'll throw her off to the side. But in terms of the actual play itself, you actually don't want to be normal summoning Lilith if you can help it. The main difference being Lilith will go to 1,000 attack if she's your normal summon, and that makes her a little bit easier to play into. People can just go battle phase on you and force things out, whereas if she's 2,000, at least force your opponent to try and play through things first. But yeah. So I would show this. My main play right now, it doesn't matter. Like if you end up going with Lilith as your normal summon, it is what it is. Like you have to take it if it's your only normal summon. Well, Ties, and right now I'm summoning Alice and Sangan. not Scarm. I am playing Fiend Griefing in my ties list though, so that means like Scarm being in the main deck means that Fiend Griefing still gets me back into my engine if I ever need it, and you know, that feels really good. So I just didn't think it was fully necessary to worry about summoning Scarm right now, because Alice is essentially doing the same thing but also giving me an additional body that doesn't destroy itself, can actually come up. So in this situation, I'm going Lilith to tribute Sangan. The reason we tribute Sangan here is because you can't activate the effects of the monster you search off of him the turn you search it. So I need to search a hand trap on my turn. So that way on my opponent's turn, it'll be live to activate. So let's just say we're grabbing a trap. Let's just say Dogmatica Punishment. That's fine. It can be whatever normal trap you want. And that's what's so cool about this. We'll grab Ash off the Sangan, is that this is so versatile. Whatever side deck you want to play, whatever main deck you want to play, the fact that this engine, that Lilith and Sangan together can get you any low attack hand trap or any normal trap is just insane. Like Ash, Veiler, Crow, Droll, Token Collector, any of those cards, and there's other ones too. Sangan can get them all. Bell, Ogre, any of them. Sangan searches all of those. So depending on what the metagame is, all you have to do is play one copy, and this combo gets you the exact setup of normal trap and hand trap that you think is best for a certain matchup. And that's like so insane there. So then from there, once you pass turn, you still have Alice on the field. And that's so huge because before we had to go for Scarm. And Scarm would have popped itself, which means Lilith would be your only monster on the field at this point, which means if your opponent, if you want to tribute to get a trap on your opponent's turn, you have to just tribute Lilith herself. Whereas in this situation, you can tribute Alice. Alice gets you a search for another Fiend, probably another Lilith, or potentially Malice if you want to play it, whatever, you know, you want to play there. While also getting you another trap, and you keep Lilith on the field. It's so important, because now if your opponent can't clear this, you just pretty much win the duel from that point. Like, I don't want to say guaranteed, but like, you just have such a crazy high chance of winning the duel at that point just because your opponent couldn't clear the Lilith. All right, and you're searching another follow-up off of Alice. That's more fodder to be tributing on to keep getting traps, keep rotating traps, and just keep it coming. And your opponent just will never get back into the duel. It's just insane when you get that set up. So that's mainly what I'm looking at there. You could go for the Scarm play, but just keep in mind you're going to summon Scarm and it's going to pop itself immediately, unless it was summoned off of Tour Guide. That's the other thing, is you could go Tour Guide for Scarm, then Ties of the Brethren for, you know, Sangan, Lilith, or you probably go Sangan, Lilith there, and then you can go, you know, Lilith, tribute the Sangan, still have Scarm, tribute the Scarm on the opponent's turn, Scarm starts you a follow-up on the end of your opponent's turn, and you still have Lilith and Scarm on the field, right? So obviously things change depending on the exact situation, but that's a pretty simple breakdown as far as like what you should expect to be going for every time you're doing your level 3 Ties of the Brethren play. But it's incredibly strong, as you can see. That's only 2 cards, by the way, so just keep in mind that like you have 3 other cards in hand in all these situations, so you're adding any normal trap in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! As well as a hand trap with 2 forms of follow-up off of just 2 cards. And that's just crazy, you know. It actually is like really insane. So then we get to the level 4 side of things, and this is where things are interesting, because I really do feel like if we got 2 really like good synergistic level 4 Dark Fiends, that this deck would like take another step forward. Like, I don't love playing Tour Guide in the deck right now. I know I said that stuff about baiting hand traps, but it's still not great. If your opponent negates and destroys Tour Guide, like maybe you're going second and they Baronne to Fleur it or something, you just pass. Like, you literally don't have a way to beat that in the deck right now. So I'd like to lean less on Tour Guide. It's just so much more fragile than going the other way with any of the other monsters, because all the other ones are floating when they're destroyed or sent to grave, or they're just Lilith. So if you compare it with LAIR, you can at least threaten your opponent immediately, you know. But with the level 4 side of things, it's just awkward, right? We already play 3 Arima, so that's what's so cool. So we already play 3 Arima, but we don't play any other level 4 Dark Fiends because they're just not good enough. They don't give us enough value. They don't actually put us in a strong enough situation to make us feel like good about like ever trying to actually go for this play. But that's something that could change. I mean, right now, these are probably the 3 best targets. You could also throw Duke Shade in there, but let's be honest, like Duke Shade, I mean, I'm throwing him in there. He's kind of like the Malice of the level 4. Like, he's just kind of poo. So anyway, this is what you'd be summoning out. Obviously, Arima, you know what Arima does. He tributes a monster, and he can either draw one card, or if he tributed a monster that wasn't himself, you can actually add any dark monster in the game that's 2,000 or higher defense. Kind of a pretty powerful generic search. Your main 3 targets that I know of are Lord of the Heavenly Prison. So if you have any trap cards, this guy becomes like really strong to search. Darkest Diabolos, but honestly, in this situation, you're resolving ties, so this card cannot summon that turn. Maybe if we get another monster that lets us tribute on the opponent's turn, maybe Diabolos becomes a little more interesting, right? Dropping Diabolos on the opponent's turn, like not the worst thing in the world. And Arlecchino, he is the new Amazement monster, came out last year, but he's an interruption, right? All you have to do is activate any trap and he can jump out of the hand, and then he can pretty much Book of Moon a monster. It's not terrible, doesn't need to summon the turn you search him. He actually has a lot of good synergy. I just found that like it kind of like watered down the deck list when I was being forced to play some of their in-archetype trap cards that like were just inherently less powerful to draw them than any of the other generic trap cards we were playing. But still something to consider. I mean, out of these 3, it's the best interruption here, whereas the other 2 are more control cards. This is like an actual interruption card, whereas the other ones just kind of help you maintain resources and like, you know, take your opponents away somewhat. So yeah. The idea here is also you have Barrier Statue of the Abyss, which, by the way, is the worst statue in the game, but it is what it is. I mean, we're struggling to find good level 4 Dark Fiend targets, and you know what? If you have to summon this guy out of the deck, your opponent, if they're not on a Dark strategy, even though it's the most popular attribute in the game, they can be in a really tough spot, especially if you find a way to something like Dogmatic of Punishment, or you play Compulsory Evacuation Device. Any removal makes this guy even harder because they can't just go battle phase and walk over him because he's only 1,000. They actually have to do stuff to clear him, which is a lot tougher. And then you have Skullmeister. The only reason I have Skullmeister here is because this is like just a not that bricky card, right? If you draw it, it can, 1, make Ties of the Brethren live in this situation. If you didn't have a level 3 Dark Fiend or anything else, it would make Ties of the Brethren live. But also, it's just a decent hand trap, right? Like if you just draw this, it's just a hand trap. Like, sure, it's a hand trap. It's fine. But when it comes to comparing this to the level 3 play, the best thing about Lilith Tribute Sangan, Lilith Tribute Alice, Lilith, I guess those are the main 2, was that not only are you getting the card off of Lilith, but then you also get another resource off of Sangan, off of Alice, right? Whether it's follow-up, whether it's another interruption, you're getting like double value off of that, or you're just plain and simply not getting that here. You're just trading Skullmeister for that. You get to keep the Barrier Statue on field, which is, again, fine, but it's the worst Barrier Statue in the game, so I'd rather not be playing him if I didn't have to. Maybe I'd side him for like matchups where I was like, oh yeah, he's just insane. They just like can't even beat him. Like, cool, but like aside from those exact matchups, like, so what is he really doing for you? And so you just end up like, this play doesn't really lead you anywhere right now. But obviously that could change. If we got a level 4 that gives us value when he's tributed, and maybe another level 4 that like is, I don't know, an interruption or a better floodgate at least than Abyss or something, like gives us better value, gives us more follow-up, whatever it is, like, then I'd be satisfied with it. But until then, we kind of have to put this on the back burner, and you have to keep these out of your deck for now. But I wanted to throw this out there because I do think people need to keep it in mind that any level 4 Dark Fiend that comes out in the future needs to be looked at very carefully in this deck, because if it's good enough, like, this deck could definitely take a step in that direction and keep pushing forward with the Ties of the Brethren variant. But I still think it's really good. I just think it's not perfect, and we could definitely use more support. Obviously, things could potentially change depending on what the new Lady of Lament does, and also the fact that Konami's on a tear, giving every old structure deck a revamp. A new version of their structure deck, like, is obviously crazy, and we'll have to see. LAIR seems like it's a couple years down the line for them, but when it comes out, like, that could be 4, 5, 6, 7 more cards, right, for the whole LAIR archetype, and then things could get crazy. So we'll just have to keep an eye out. Konami's been giving actually like a random nice amount of support as of late, whether it's Alice, the new girl Lolith, as well as Lord of the Heavenly Prison. I know he's generic, but he has extra synergy in this deck that other decks don't have, or even being able to search him and whatnot. But really, really cool. Hopefully this helped anybody that was kind of confused. I know I had posted some deck profiles where people were really curious about like how exactly the Ties of the Brethren variant is functioning. So hopefully this helps you there. This also helps you as far as what I'm looking for support going forward to help the Ties of the Brethren variant. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me there. So thank you so much for watching. As always, guys, subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date on all things Yu-Gi-Oh with me, whether it's deck profiles, whether it's videos like this, whether it's review videos on new cards that are really interesting. Subscribe for all of that stuff, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace.